Okay, still here. Ew, 6:57. Time moves in a linear forward direction, always. I don't buy all the theoretics about physicists' concepts of time. I accept the fact that time moves forward. So, here we go. I got the rights. She gave me a price. Sony agreed. I paid them both. I made the movie. I put them in the movie. I got into festivals. Everything was fine. So I had the Porkpie hat, and I love the Porkpie hat. But it's very funny because when I walk around with a Porkpie hat, the people who in New York, a lot of people don't comment about anything. You could have a killer clown with a live goat on his head walking down Broadway, and people will just continue drinking coffee and talking on their cell phone. But when I walk down the street in the Porkpie hat, I get compliments. But the compliments usually come from hardcore people. It comes from drug addicts and serious nasties and people hanging out on the corner. They're like, "Hey man, nice hat." Okay, cool. So here's what happened. I ended up wearing the hat a lot because I really, really like it. And some years went by and I had a new problem. The rights that I had bought had expired, but the festivals that wanted my piece in the festivals needed rights. So I wrote Susan and I said, look, one of the reasons that I have Charles's work in my piece is that it's going to a whole new audience in the world. These are young people. Some of them don't even know about jazz, let alone Charles Mingus. And it's a way of introducing Charles to people who've never even heard of the guy. So I'm not making any money on this. An independent animator putting out work into festivals is not going to make money. And I told her, it's an act of love. What I'm asking you for are the rights. And we're done. Just give me the rights. That's all. Nothing. She wouldn't answer. And I wrote a number of times. Nothing. So the woman I live with, who is far more reasonable than I am, I asked her, what should I do? And she said, well, I don't know what you can do. And I read to her a letter I wrote. It was a nasty letter. I told Susan, I said, look, I'm not asking for much. This is for him. I need it. I'm not making money. Can you just either give me the rights or not, but tell me yes or no? Here, all you have to do is multiple choice. Yes or no. Give me the checkbox and send the goddamn thing back. And the woman I love with, the woman I love said, you can't send that. And I said, you're right, but I'm going to send it. And I sent it. And a week later, I got a letter back, said, fine, yes, go ahead. So I got rid of it. So I'm still wearing the Porkpie hat, and the years go by. And right now, it's 2022. I'm not sure how many years ago, but it's not very many. So let's just say, for argument's sake, let's just say 2020. Okay? I'm walking down the steps of the subway, of the 2nd Avenue subway, of the F train, which stops at 2nd Avenue, but also 1st Avenue because it's a long train. And I get on at 1st Avenue in Houston, which is pronounced Houston, not Houston, because Houston is a man in Texas and Houston was a man in the Carolinas, two different people. You can look it up. I'm walking down the stairs, and at exactly the moment I'm walking down the stairs to hit the platform, the F train is coming in. The wind was so exactly perfect that it blew my Porkpie hat off my head. So I went, oh man, I'll go. And I look around, I couldn't see it. And I look around, the train's there, and I look around, can't see it. The train leaves, and I'm looking, the train leaves, and I'm looking, and I'm looking. It's nowhere. I said, how's it? It blew off my head. Where could it be? And I couldn't find it. And I looked, and I said, well, I just don't understand it. So the next train came, and I took the train. But by the time I got to the next stop, which was Broadway Lafayette, I thought, I can't deal with this. This hat means too much to me. So I went back to 2nd Avenue, which is 1st Avenue, which you understand. Nowhere to be seen. And I was like, this is just so depressing. And I went to work. I got to work, and traditionally I get to work, I put my hat on a table, I put my glasses by the hat, I sit down, there was no hat to put by the table. So that night I got home, and the next morning I wore a different hat. I wore a cap, and I went to work, and I put the cap where the hat should have been, and this whole thing was still very depressing, but I was starting to get over it. That night, I come back and I thought, I'm going to give one more look. And I did. And on the edge of the third rail, that if you don't know, the subway runs on electricity. It's on 2 tracks, and there's a third track, and the third track is called the third rail. That's DC 600 volt, high amp, hot. Sometimes people die on it, sometimes because they touch it by mistake, or sometimes because they kill themselves. I look, and I'm sticking out from the very edge of the shadow of the third rail is the brim of my hat. I went, oh man, there it is. And I thought, I can't climb down onto the tracks. But that track isn't in service. The other track is in service, and usually the track it was on is usually out of service, and it's used for something else. But I thought, I can't climb down onto the tracks because I'm just not agile enough anymore. I'm they call me a senior citizen. Okay, so I thought, you know what? What if at the end of the track there's a stairway? I thought, okay, I walked to the end of the track, there was a stairway. I said, oh shit. I walk down the stairway onto the track. I walk up the track, and then I'm standing by my hat, which is under the third rail. And I'm thinking, I got to do this really carefully, And so I get down on my knee, and some guy up on the platform who's with another guy and a girl, and they're kind of partying. And he goes, don't do it. Don't do it. Thinking I was going to kill myself. So I'm sitting there, or I'm on one knee, and I'm staring at it. I'm thinking, okay, steady. There's plenty of room between my hat and the third rail. I'm going down on the ground. I'm going to go in. I'm going to pull my hat out. I reached under the third rail, and I pulled my hat out. And I got up, and I walked back to the end of the track, and I got up the stairs, and I went over to these 3 people, and I told them, this is my story. This is my hat. This is my I love this hat. You don't even know the story, but I couldn't lose it. And wow. So I got on the train. I had my cap, which I no longer needed. I put my cap in my jacket. I got to the studio, and I put my Porkpie hat on the table where it's supposed to be. I took off my Wayfarer sunglasses and put it by my hat. And I thought, I am happy. And it's goodbye Porkpie hat. Da 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 dum dum, bum ba da da dum, da 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 dum dum, da 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 dum dum dum. That's my story.